Hello, welcome to Core Mentor. My name is Daniel. I'm a business professional and I've overcome some very challenging moments in life. I am extremely passionate in helping you reach healing and achieve your goals on your life journey. Today, the topic is mindfulness, and it's a practice that can help you develop stronger self-awareness. A core tool that we focus on in this channel is self-awareness, and it's broken into two parts. You have internal self-awareness, what's going on inside of you. You have external self-awareness, what's going on with the people around you, your environment, your culture, etc. And with self-awareness, it's so important to achieve that and use it as a tool, is it helps you make decisions. It helps you do what you want to do to heal, to do the things you need to do to heal, to reach your goals, to plan, to strategize, and to move forward and not get knocked off the path. So mindfulness is this new buzzword. It's been around for a while, but it's really coming up in personal development. And what it helps to do is to ground you and bring you to the present. It helps you to review your emotions in a non-judgmental or biased way so you can process them. And it helps ground you mentally, like with your thoughts, and physically through your sensations, so that you can bring yourself into the present moment. It's a form of calming meditation, and it can be practiced anywhere, which is really helpful to use it throughout your day and throughout your week and life. So you may be wondering, why mindfulness? Why is that important, and why is self-awareness so important? And that's because we have two pretty big problems that we're facing. I wouldn't say they're unique to the human race, but they're really growing in difficulty. You have technology, and technology has really helped us. You can now take a picture of a check, deposit in your bank account, save so much time and have to drive there. But at the same time, it's also very distracting. It can be very overwhelming if you're getting too many messages at work. And then also is the breakdown, or I wouldn't say complete breakdown of human relationship, but human relationships are becoming more difficult in today's modern society. If you think back 100 or 200 years ago, people were extremely close, really tight-knit in families or in villages. And as we become more independent, that has, to a degree, broken that down. I'm not saying it's completely removed it, but a statistic that you can think about is the 50% divorce rate. So now if you're going to go out and start a family, you have a 50% failure rate. That's pretty high. And then that'll break apart a husband and wife, that'll break apart the children. And then on top of that, another example I'd like to use is that the UK has appointed a minister of loneliness. So the government thinks that people are getting so lonely that we need to create a person in a department to focus on and work on that, because it's really causing a lot of problems. So some of the problems that come from that is you lose focus on yourself, which really starts to break down internal awareness, and that starts to break down your power, and then you lose focus on your goals, and so that'll really start hitting you in your productivity and your progress. And you're constantly receiving suggestive messaging from technology, and this could be for a service or a lifestyle, and it's all basically trying to sell you something. It's trying to sell you a religion, it's trying to sell you a product, and that will impact your focus, because now having a Bugatti is a life goal. You need $2.5 million or whatever to go buy a supercar to be cool and successful. Your definition of cool and success has changed, and it might not even be your personal definition of that. Now, hitting on the social and relational connection issues, those do seem to be weakening, and some of the issues that are coming out of that, you can think about increased anxiety, increased depression, and there are studies that show whenever children don't have secure attachment to their parents, that there is a strong likelihood that they'll be insecure moving into their own lives. That means that they're going to carry with them increased anxiety and depression and the kind of problems that come along with that. And then society at large, am I having issues in school or at work, and so on and so forth, and that just builds and compounds. Which leads me to the last problem, is you have building and compounding internal issues that aren't getting resolved. And without this internal awareness and ability to work through that, without understanding the roadblocks that are hitting you with your goals, without setting goals that align with your true authentic self, you begin to form into a very frustrated, possibly even explosive or highly depressed type of person, because there's a lot of blockage, there's a lot of unresolved issues, and people can either explode in anger from that, or they can repress it and have very odd or very unhealthy reactions and behaviors. A mindfulness practice is a great way to deal with this growing list of challenges and problems, because First and foremost, it allows you to become emotionally centered and calm. It gives you a way to process and deal with your emotions, your anger, your sadness, and so much more. That way they don't build up on you and control and override your behavior. You'll be able to form thoughtful responses to what's going on instead of reactive, impulsive responses. It provides you with an easy-to-use tool to reduce stress, which is so important because stress will trigger your fight or your flight brain, and that means that your rational thinking is basically out the window. The decisions and choices you make when you're triggered with stress are typically not the best ones, and so it'll help you manage those stress levels so you stay in a more rational place and feel more confident about your decisions and make the right decisions to get to where you want to be. And it brings you to the present. This is where your decisions are made. This is where, if you're going to take an action or do something, that is done. You can think about the past and reflect. You can focus on the future and plan. Try not to worry too much. But where change is right now, this very moment, what you decide to do next. So it's so important to be able to clear out thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, and be in the moment throughout your day. What you'll experience is a calming mentally. You'll also experience a calming physically, which is really interesting. I was completely unaware of this until I started doing mindfulness practices. You'll experience a recognition of emotion and ability to process them in a more healthy way. And then you'll also experience, like I just said, clarity of thought in mind and the ability to follow through with your rational side. One aspect of a regular mindful practice that I've really personally enjoyed is how it becomes a part of your normal thought process. It'll slowly start to sink in, and your thoughts and your behaviors will begin to incorporate it on a daily basis. You don't have to be in a mindful practice for it to be effective. You'll be able to take what you learn in these sessions and take it out into your day-to-day. You'll be able to recognize when people or events are causing you to feel a certain way. Anger is a great example. Whenever something happens at work that makes your life more difficult, you might experience anger, and you'll start to recognize, oh, this word or this situation, or when this person speaks to me a certain way or doesn't treat me the way I want to be treated, there's this anger trigger inside of myself. You'll begin to recognize those kind of things, and then now anger is not this horrible bad thing. Anger is just an emotion, so you can start looking at it and considering what's triggering it, what's causing it, instead of immediately reacting. And I'm sure we all have had a situation where we got so angry we did something and we really regretted it. This leads into processing emotions when they're small and forming versus having them bottle up, or versus having them be something that you just can't deal with. If you've never learned how to deal with great sadness or great anger, it can be overwhelming and you just don't know what to do with it, and you just have to deal with it and let it run your life until it leaves. But if you can start processing it and dealing with it when it's smaller, it won't get to these huge, overpowering levels. You'll develop a healthy way to manage stress, and there are many unhealthy ways to manage stress. Over drinking, angry outbursts, doom scrolling on social media, just looking at it for hours to get those little hits of dopamine, playing video games forever. The list goes on and on and on. There's so many unhealthy ways to deal with stress. And when you develop healthy ways to deal with stress, stress stops ruling your life. And I'm not saying video games are bad, but you'll want to limit your use. And when stress is ruling your life, these unhealthy ways are done in just extreme amounts. So much time, 10 hours of a day is spent playing video games. And lastly, it helps you develop a habit that leads to clear, rational thinking. It will, if you are anything like me and very emotional, it'll teach you and bring into habit a more thoughtful way of approaching your problems, your challenges, and that is extremely important. It's okay to be emotional, it's okay to feel emotions, but you do want to get to a place of clarity and a place of rationality to deal with problems or to figure out a way to achieve a goal. So this sounds wonderful. You want to get into mindfulness, so how do you do it? There's several different ways to go about mindfulness, and one of the first ways that I came across is the guided meditation. And so that's where you're listening to somebody, that you can sit in a chair, sit on the floor, and they'll talk you through closing your eyes, feeling physical sensations and thoughts and emotions. And basically, they'll guide you to a place and they'll guide you through mindfulness and the practices so you get the benefits of it. Another way is through yoga practices, and that brings in a lot of movement and breathing. So it focuses a little more on the body sensations, but also goes through your emotions and your mental sensations. I really like that one because I enjoy movement. I love exercising, do like weightlifting and whatnot. And don't think of like Pilates or exercise yoga. It's much calmer, much slower, and a lot less physically demanding. So what are the sources if you want to practice? You have wellness apps, and they'll have like guided meditation tracks and music and audio and visual. And then there's also YouTube, which is awesome because it's free, and there's a lot of different professionals on there and people that will talk you through and guide you through meditations. And then lastly, you can go to a live class, which would be really interactive. And if you enjoy being in person to person, that's a great channel. So I want to share a little bit about my personal experience with the mindfulness practice and why I think it's extremely beneficial. So I'm a very emotionally driven kind of person, always have been. Emotions have played a really big part in my life. And I feel like they've, to a degree, controlled my behavior, and I wasn't fully aware of how much emotion impacted me and caused impulsivity and reactivity instead of being able to chart my own course. Now, I've been able to achieve my goals throughout life and grow and progress, but it's definitely caused ongoing issues to be very emotionally driven and not really understand that and not really know how to use that to my benefit. And so at work, that was the first place. During the COVID period, all this wellness stuff started coming out, all this mental health exercises started coming out, and that's where I started listening to some of my first tracks. I also had a mentor that talked about it a little bit, and then I was also doing therapy, and my therapist talked a lot about like the body-mind connection and was encouraging that. And so mindfulness is a really powerful way to establish a body-mind connection. And when I was first doing it, and I would listen to the audio tracks, so put in my headphones, sit in my chair, and close your eyes, breathe, think about this, let your emotions go through, do a body scan, what sensations are you feeling, all kinds of things like that. I felt like it was a little cheesy, it was very different for me, it was pretty uncomfortable, and I didn't do it regularly. And I do remember through certain challenging parts of my life, I would try to do mindfulness. There's at one point where I listened to a Christian mindfulness track, so it got into spirituality and God and your feelings and sensations and connections with all of that. It was very calming and peaceful, but it wasn't really a regular practice. Then I found mindfulness yoga practices, and I enjoyed it. That's where I started noticing a big change in my sensations. After I'd do it, I was very calm and clear-headed. My anxiety and stress levels would go down. And I was going through some very challenging moments in life when I came across this. But it wasn't a regular practice. It wasn't something I did regularly. And one thing I learned recently is that if people do yoga about 3 times a week, then their stress levels are a lot lower than people that don't. And I was dealing with high stress levels, and so I was like, okay, I gotta do this. Like, really put this into practice. I do all this learning, and this has told me something specific to do. I need to put into practice. And so for 1 or 2 weeks, I did it 3 times a week, and I noticed like incredible calming. I felt great, and it was a big improvement. And what's surprising is what really made it clear to me that I needed to make this a regular mindfulness practice is when I wasn't doing it. So after about 2 weeks, I stopped, and there was this one Friday, I won't ever forget it because it was just such a shock, but my anxiety and my stress was just starting to go through the roof. And I couldn't focus. I remember I was at work, and I was just so distracted, and I was worried about so much in life, and all my problems were like 10 times bigger than they really were. And I realized, wow, I stopped doing my mindfulness yoga, and my stress levels are incredible. So I need to start doing this 3 times a week and see what happens. I need to take this serious because this is terrible. So after that, I got into the practice about 3 times a week, and we're talking about like 13-minute, 20-minute videos, things like that, really short, easy to work into the day. Then dramatically, whenever I would get into like high conflict situations with, say, a loved one or someone close to me, as maybe insults were being said or something like that, I noticed there was just such a calm response inside of myself. And it completely grabbed my attention because I had been emotional and reactive for a lot of my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here, I'm taking it, I'm thinking about it, I'm processing it, I'm reacting in the way I want to react. And it really grabbed my attention. And what I realized was that I think my nervous system or my body was just really, really powerful. So you have your rational side and your body, And my rational side would go, oh, I'm going to react with compassion, or I'm really going to think through things. But when I get into these high conflict situations, my body and my nervous system would send up all these stress alarms and everything, and then just overwhelm my mind, and I'd go right to fight or flight. Well, doing mindfulness yoga 3 times a week calmed those stress levels down and calm my internal self down to a point to where I could respond the way I wanted to respond. And I was like, there's my value. This is why I'm doing it. That is such a powerful change and so helpful and useful. I'm going to continue doing this. And it really helped establish my body-mind connection and unify my internal self. And what I find is I have to keep it up. I have to keep doing mindfulness 2-3 times a week, or else I'll start to lose that edge. And I love having that edge. So is mindfulness for you? We've done a lot of talking about it. We've talked about the benefits, my own personal experience with it, the challenges we're facing. And I think just do a really quick test to find out. Ask yourself questions like, how emotionally reactive or impulsive am I? And if it is low and you are in charge, then great, you're doing really well. But if it's high and you're not behaving the way you want to behave because your emotions are running the show, that's an indicator that you should. Another question to go along with that is, can your emotions exist without that reactivity, impulsivity, or judgment? Are you able to consider your emotions and process your emotions? And are all emotions just emotions? If there's a really heavy message of negativity on emotions, then that's an indicator that mindfulness would help. And lastly, how high is your stress level? If you have a consistently moderate to high stress level, then I would recommend mindfulness. That's a big benefit that I got from it, is it helped me lower my stress levels, get me out of fight or flight, get me into rational, and start to behave the way that I want. So take some time, think about it, write it down, process it, and if you're thinking, yes, I need to try mindfulness, I have a few tips on how to get started. So it takes about 30 days to form a habit, and so when you're starting, I would recommend giving yourself the challenge of trying it maybe once a week. And when you're trying it, do different formats. Try looking up different topics and themes. Try it outside, try it inside. Because for me, when I first started, it felt odd, it felt stupid, it felt weird, it felt different. And I had to keep trying and looking until I found what worked for me. And observe the differences. This is where you will find your value. This is where it'll really stick with you. For example, when I first started, I had small differences. I was calm after doing it. My stress levels had gone down. I felt more relaxed and less worried about my to-do list or challenges in the future. But it was kind of temporary, so it didn't really stick. What really stuck with me is when I realized I'd done mindfulness yoga and I stopped, and my stress levels were just out of control. My anxiety was starting to go up. And then also when I realized mindfulness is helping me in some of my most difficult intimate relationships, when they're becoming very challenging and where I feel very insulted, I was now able to calmly respond. And once I observed those differences, especially after that last example, I was like, this is something I'm going to do. This is going to become regular. And when you observe the differences, that's where your value gets defined, and that's what will bring it into your life. And ultimately, in anything that you do, you want to see why it benefits you. You want to understand why it benefits you, because that will encourage you to continue forward. But thank you everyone for watching the video on mindfulness. I hope this helps and challenges you a little bit, gives you some questions to ask yourself. I found it as a great tool to help develop self-awareness, and that's going to be another topic for another time. I think we're going to do a lot on self-awareness. It's what I would call a core tool. I believe in you. I want you to have the best life possible. Doesn't matter what you've been through or where you want to go. You can definitely do it if you go about it the right way. I'm here to help and encourage. Thanks for watching the video. If any of this brought up any questions or whatnot, feel free to put those down below. Subscribe for more great content, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.